Protea is one of the most versatile, strong, and fun frames in this game, and ever since I've made this build, I have not been able to put her down. I hope you all enjoy. This build pretty much has automated 200 kills per minute. It has a bunch of CC, a bunch of armor strip. You're pretty much immortal because you have 2 layers of immortality, one of those being a 3-second shield gate, and a ability that rewinds time if you even die, which is incredibly unlikely, but it's there just in case. As always, if you only care about the build and already know Protea or don't care about my yapping, I will link the timestamp in the description below. Getting into Protea's abilities, her first ability is actually 2 abilities in one. One being great CC and great armor strip with the augment we're using. The second one is absolutely broken. It is pretty much on-demand Arcane Aegis at all times. That's if Arcane Aegis also doubles your shield gate duration. Protea's second ability, she summons a fire turret that does a guaranteed heat proc and also boosts its damage by 1x every single time it hits an enemy. This also has infinite body punch through, so if you have a grouping tool, it can get up to its max ramp, which is 99 charges. However, with the augment we're using, it is nerfed down to 20x, but in exchange, it follows you around. This turret is insanely powerful and it can push out millions of damage if you build it right. Her third ability, Dispensary, is pretty much an ammo, health, and energy pad all in one, but it's also empowered, so they're all 100 each. This ability is amazing. It's pretty much infinite energy and also infinite ammo, so you can pretty much use any weapon with her with no ammo problems whatsoever if you're using Dispensary. Unfortunately for this build, we actually have to subsume it off in order to use the helmet we're using for this build. But don't get it twisted, this ability is amazing. This is one of the strongest, most comfy abilities in the game. It is one of my favorite helmet abilities. I highly recommend you get it for just like a daily driver frame. It is incredible. Protea's fourth ability, and one of the most interesting and unique abilities in the entire game, Temporal Anchor. Pretty much what it does is you put an anchor in time, and while you do actions, it accumulates damage. So any damage you do while you're in this form is accumulated. And then when the duration ends, or whenever you take it down yourself, it detonates, doing the damage that you did in that time as, I believe it's blast damage. Note, this isn't a blast proc, it's just blast damage. So you're not getting a proc where you get everyone hit in an AoE and it does like a more billion damage, and sadly it doesn't do that. It is still quite cool though. However, that isn't really the reason why we're using this ability. We're using this ability because it's what allows the 2 augments we're using to work. Without this ability, those augments don't work. Another cool thing about this ability is that while you're in it, you cannot die. If you die, you just get rewound back to when you first activated the ability. So you have 2 forms of immortality with Protea pretty much. A lot of people find the rewind aspect of this really annoying, which is the reason why it's subsumed off. Also, her other abilities are much better than this ability. The only reason why we're using it is because of the augments needing it. It's still incredibly interesting though, so I think it's cool to have, and has some use cases. Like, you can like tag yourself like a point in time where you're like next to an objective, like in a disruption or something like that, and then you can go kill the disruption target that's far away, and then you can immediately just zip yourself back to wherever you need to go next. So there is use cases if you know exactly where to use it, but knowing exactly where to use it can be a little difficult. The more you use it, the easier it is though. I think it's quite a fun ability. I think it's underappreciated. Alright, with all that said, here's the build. The aura, we're doing growing power for extra power strength, because we are nuking our power strength for a good amount of range and a good amount of duration. We're using narrow-minded due to the duration on Temporal Anchor being dog shit, so in order to counteract that, we have to use narrow-minded, but that nukes our range, so we have to use overextended, but that nukes our strength. However, that doesn't really matter that much on Protea, and you'll see why with how much strength we are stacking. So we have growing power, 25%, and then we have Molt Augmented, which is an extra 60%, and those are the only strength mods on the build itself. However, we are also using Materia for an extra 40%, and Protea's passive, giving us an extra 100% strength. So, turns out 40% strength plus all those strength buffs is a lot of strength still, so you can pretty much nuke your strength with her and still be fine. Alright, so next up we got Archon Vitality to double our damage. This is pretty much all this does, it doubles our artillery's damage, gives an extra heat proc. We got Stretch for an extra range, Prime Continuity for even more duration, and Equilibrium for energy sustain. We actually aren't running Flow on this build because I feel like she has enough energy already, so at least I don't really feel any issues with it. We got huge DPS increase, of course, because for a lot of shield gate frames, this is kind of important. Alright, so, and then our final arcane here is going to be Arcane Steadfast. Arcane Steadfast, every now and then we'll get 3 free ability casts, and that with Equilibrium makes us incredibly comfy all the fucking time. I am using Ceto as my primary. There's a couple options you can do here. I'm using this as a primer, just an all-around primer. Just throw it down a hallway. They can usually hit the enemies before the turret does, which is the reason why I use this, because other primers I have to be kind of in front of them, but this one I could just fire and forget, and it'll track the enemies way far away from me. And primal viral and heat and stuff, and it's quite good. Where's the other weapon? Proboscis Cernos. This is another one you can use. It's a grouping tool. However, if using Nautilus, the Sentinel we're using for this build, you don't need this. I think that's about it. You can use Bubonico as well for viral priming as well if you want. You can use pretty much anything. The problem is that, at least in base steel path, this build kills things too quickly for you to even really shoot your guns. So it's good to just have support weapons. For the secondary, we have the Occucore. This is my personal favorite for this build because you can just shoot along with your turrets, and if you get a kill, you'll get the Tendrils and Cascadia Flares constantly procced because of the turrets, so you're constantly at full damage with that at least. This is the build for that. I am not using Galvanized Shot, but if you were to do that, just take the Riven off and put Galvanized Shot there. It's more damage. So that's that. And then the other choice you could do is you could do an Epitaph. And you could do a Heat Inherit Epitaph with a faction mod, but we're running Roar, so it's additive to that, so you don't need to run this, but good to have. You want to cover as much ground as possible and just pump in as much heat mods as you can. Yep, just all the heat mods you can. And it makes your turrets do a lot of damage. However, our Sentinel is also doing what this is doing, so it doesn't matter that much. So that's why I just end up running Occucore instead. We got Harmony, so this is kind of just here to work as Expedite Suffering for the build. So sometimes there's enemies that can only take a certain amount of status procs at one time, like Necromechs and Acolytes and stuff, and what this will do is it'll just detonate them on it and also add their slash procs from the Harmony itself. This is the build for that. We got Melee Afflictions to get like the 6, 7 procs, fucking hundreds, millions of damage. But this weapon's broken. Okay, moving on to the Sentinel, which is the reason why we are no longer running a grouping ability with Protea, which is what I would run before. I would run Snare. But since the companion changes, companions are incredibly reliable, especially with Manifold Bond, so I am running Nautilus. It's a great grouping tool. It also boosts our damage with our weapons. Doesn't really matter that much. I have another build for Nautilus. Oh, it's all messed up because I formatted it, but yeah, we'll calculate a redirection, and then you use, where is it? Yeah, reinforced bond. You slap that right here. And you get an extra 60% fire rate, pretty much. So if you weren't focusing on like a damage build for your Sentinel, I would highly recommend just support. However, I like damage builds on Sentinels. So we got all this stuff here. Duplex bond, so just more fire everywhere. So it's pretty much doing what Epitaph would do. We got Verglass as well. This is the Verglass build. Don't have a Riven, you can just run Serration or something. You'll still be killing shit. Or you can run Shred for Punch Through. Punch Through on the Verglass is actually quite good because of Contagious Bond. And that's that. That's all for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy this build. Have a great day, or night. Goodbye.